if you're not doing these things, you are leaving yourself vulnerable. And the first one is the language of a great lease. Man, your lease has to be in writing. And I don't just mean the document you sign on day one. Everything has to be in writing. Your communication should be in writing. Your modification should definitely be in writing. All of your notices should be in writing. Everything that is associated with your lease should be in a written form, and particularly a written form that you can demonstrate easily to the court. Now, you're thinking, Ernie, I've never had to go to court. No, but when you do, you're going to be glad that you are court ready. That means your lease, it means your notice, it means your modification, your renewal, and all of your communication can easily be shown to the court. Because if you can't display in a writing what you have agreed to, what you have absolutely disagreed on, it's going to be hard for you to prove to a court where you have the burden of proof. Remember, as a plaintiff, you are stuck with the burden to show that more likely than not, what you're saying is accurate. That's the standard, more likely than not. And if you can't get to more likely than not, you lose every single time. So key one of the language of a great lease, put it in writing. God blessed us with this language and a written form, and we got to use it every single time. Don't just limit it to day one and the writing of that lease. All of your communication, all of your modification, all of your notice should be in clear written form. The terms in your lease then should be clear and precise. There's nothing worse than a term in a lease that is ambiguous. For example, you say no pets allowed except for a dog. Your lease has an ambiguity there because it says no, but then it says, but yes. Okay, so maybe it's a limitation. But did you define that dog? Did you mean a 120-pound dog? Or were you thinking a 15-pound little toy dog? Because if you're not specific with your clients or with your tenants, they're going to get it wrong. Not intentionally always. And sometimes they're going to push the limits. So if you said no pets allowed except for a dog, well, right off the bat, that no goes away. You have allowed a pet. Does she mean I can also have a cat? What if that dog needs a friend and I get another dog? They're cool with it, right? But if you don't put an exclusion except for a dog and nothing else, you might create an ambiguity that allows your tenant to do things that you otherwise did not anticipate. So if you're going to allow something that otherwise you wouldn't allow, make sure that you limit it appropriately, that your lease describes those limitations. If, for example, you say you cannot alter the premises in any way, and a lot of standard written leases say something to that effect. You're not allowed to change anything. But your tenant says, well, we have a baby coming. We would like to decorate the baby's room. And you say, oh, how adorable. Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. And then they want to paint the living room and figure she was cool with that. She's going to be cool with this. And perhaps that ambiguity, because you allowed something in the past, might create some future problem that now, once they've moved out, it's like, what is going on with this living room? Why did they paint the ceiling? This doesn't make sense. Except, oh yeah, I didn't stop it. Landlords, as always, we welcome you to follow us on our Instagram page. If you're not a member yet, join us on Facebook. And if you enjoy what you see here, give us a thumbs up. Click that like button. We enjoy that very much. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And so your lease should be clear and all of your communication should be precise. If you're going to allow an inch, exclude anything beyond that. Finally, your lease should be sufficient. If you have a one-page lease, it is insufficient because it is either A, too tiny to read, or B, just doesn't have enough terms and conditions, limitations, and explanations for your tenant to know exactly what you expect out of them. If you've got a one-pager, you just don't have enough. How many of you use the Texas Association of Realtors lease? All right. How many pages long is that?
It's about 41 pages.
Oh, it can get long. Absolutely, it can get long with all the addenda that maybe are attached to it. The standard is 16 pages, but yeah, that thing can get long. And if yours is less than 16 pages, you may not actually have the full version of that lease. There are redone versions of it all over the place. I've seen people get real creative. Well, I'm not part of the association. I made up my own based on it back in 1984. Well, the law's changed since then, and you need to update your lease. Your lease must be sufficient, number one, to match the current state of the law, but number two, to make sure that it accomplishes your goals. Everybody's property is a little bit different. And so you may need to add addenda to your lease that is specific to property A and distinct from property B and distinct from property C and so on. So how many of you have the same house rules for every property and every tenant? How many of you include house rules? A good number of you. If you are leaving house rules out, you are closing down an opportunity to share with your tenant how specifically you want. Your lease may say, I want you to maintain the yard, but you might mean something very specific in terms of how often it gets watered, how often it should be mowed, what to do with trees, you know, who's in charge of these particular things. Do you have a swimming pool maybe? Do you have some other equipment that's in the garage that's supposed to stay in the garage and not be touched? Your house rules are going to be specific to your property and should be explicit in black and white. You are telling your tenant, these are my expectations for the use of this property. Your lease might already refer to it. Some leases refer to it as community rules. Some lease, especially if you have a multifamily, some leases refer to it as house rules, or they were like house policies, or some other document. But your lease should refer to it, and it should be attached to your lease on the date of lease signing. Now, can you modify it later? Yes, but like with any modification, it better be signed by everybody, or it's not agreed. So if you do it on the day of lease signing, you got them, right? They initial it, everybody initials it, they sign the original document, we're locked in.